Dr. Elias Kane moved slowly through the thick, misty forest of Arendor 9, careful not to make a sound. The ground beneath him was soft, damp with alien moss that seemed to glow faintly under the twin suns. Every step had to be measured. Even the slightest noise could startle the creatures he had come here to study. He had been here for weeks observing the Lyria, the planet's most intelligent native species, yet he had not approached them closely enough to risk revealing himself. The Lyria were remarkable. They looked human at first glance, with tall, slender bodies and delicate features, but there was something otherworldly about them. Their skin shimmered faintly in the light, changing hue depending on their mood. Their eyes were larger than human eyes and seemed to see more than just shapes and colors. Elias had watched them interact from a distance, noting the subtle gestures, the way they touched, the way their eyes communicated messages he could not yet understand. He crouched behind a cluster of glowing ferns, lifting his notebook to write his observations. They appear to have social rituals much more complex than we expected, he whispered under his breath. The way they touch hands and tilt their heads, there's meaning there, something beyond emotion. A soft rustle to his left made him freeze. He held his breath, trying to make himself invisible. His heart raced, knowing that the Lyria could hear far better than humans. Even a faint whisper carried further than he imagined. For hours, Elias had been thinking quietly, theorizing about their intelligence and communication. He had not realized how loud even his thoughts sounded to someone who could perceive them. He tilted his head, trying to listen to the quiet sounds of the forest, the hum of the alien insects, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a winged creature. Then he heard it. A voice, soft but clear, cutting through the forest like a blade. "Careful, human. I can hear you." Elias froze so abruptly that he almost dropped his notebook. His eyes darted around, searching for the source of the voice. There was no one visible. His mind raced. Had he misheard? He had been alone for weeks, and now suddenly someone spoke. From the shadows of the trees, a figure stepped forward. She was taller than a human, her movements fluid, graceful. Yet every step exuded a quiet strength. Her skin shimmered faintly in shades of green and blue, and her large almond-shaped eyes studied him with intensity. Elias's breath caught in his throat. This was the Lyria, and she had just spoken to him. He swallowed hard. I didn't mean to." His voice trailed off. Words seemed inadequate in that moment, almost foolish. How could he explain weeks of silent observation to a creature far more intelligent than himself? The Lyria tilted her head slightly, as if considering his words. "You think your silence hides you," she said, her voice musical, calm, yet somehow carrying authority. "But your thoughts, they are louder than you know." Elias's mind spun. Could she really hear his thoughts? Or was this some form of understanding he could not yet comprehend? He realized that all his careful planning, all his precautions had been for nothing. Here was a being who could perceive him in ways he had never imagined. He took a careful step forward, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm Dr. Elias Kane," he said. "I study your people. I mean no harm." The Lyria regarded him silently for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice softer now, almost a whisper that seemed to brush against his mind rather than his ears. "You are curious. Not dangerous, that is, rare." Elias exhaled slowly, tension leaving his shoulders. He had not expected to be called rare. The Lyria seemed to smile, a slight upturn at the corners of her mouth, though it was subtle, almost imperceptible. It was enough, however, to make him feel some small measure of welcome. He lowered himself to sit cross-legged on the mossy ground, careful to keep his movements smooth and non-threatening. "I have been observing you for weeks," he said. "I wanted to understand. Your language, your gestures, the way you live together." The Lyria moved closer, her steps silent, almost floating above the forest floor. She stopped a few meters away, studying him with those large, knowing eyes. "You do not simply watch. You think quietly, yet I hear every thought. You wonder about our rituals, our ways, our purpose." Elias nodded slowly. "Yes, I've been trying to understand without disturbing you." "Disturbing?" She tilted her head again. "You think like humans. Quiet observation is thoughtless to us. We feel, we know, we understand, all without speaking, yet you think in ways I can feel?" Elias blinked. "You can feel my thoughts?" he asked, a little hesitant. "Yes," she said simply. "Not all thoughts, not all humans. But your mind is open. Your curiosity, your carefulness. It carries through your every gesture, every breath. You are different. The human's mind raced with questions. This was beyond any anthropological study he had ever imagined. He had expected to study behavior, perhaps record sounds, gestures, even the faint bioelectric signals of the Lyria. He had not expected to communicate with one, to feel as if his inner thoughts were visible. Transparent. Why do you hide your thoughts? She asked suddenly. Curiosity alone should not be secret. It is a gift, not a weakness. Elias hesitated. We humans, we are cautious. We are afraid of what we do not understand. The Lyria's eyes softened and she stepped a little closer. Fear blinds humans. Curiosity frees them, yet you have learned both. That is why I watch you. The two of them sat in silence for a moment, the mist curling around their bodies. Elias studied her carefully. She was beautiful, yes, but not just in appearance. There was intelligence there, a depth that he had only read about in theory. Her presence was commanding yet calming, and every movement she made was deliberate, meaningful. Finally, he asked, "What is your name?" "Lyra," she said. "And you, human?" "Elias," he replied. Dr. Elias Kane. Lyra's gaze held him for a long moment. "Elias, you think quietly, yet you are loud in ways you cannot hear. I wonder what you will do with this gift." Elias frowned slightly. "Gift? You hear us as we hear each other. You see only the surface, but I sense the depth of your thoughts. This is rare. Not all humans are capable of this." Elias's heart thumped in his chest. This was more than he had ever imagined. Not only was he observing the Lyria, but he was being observed in ways he could not fully understand. He felt a mix of excitement and fear. Excitement for the discovery, fear of the unknown. Lyra tilted her head slightly, then took a step back into the shadows. "I will watch you," she said, "but you must learn. Not all humans are ready for understanding." Elias nodded, realizing that the journey ahead would be more complicated than he had thought. He had not only discovered a new intelligent species, but he had also encountered a being who could perceive him as clearly as he observed her. As Lyra disappeared into the forest, Elias scribbled notes feverishly. His hands shook with adrenaline and wonder. He had thought he was careful, quiet, and hidden. Yet here was proof that the universe had a way of revealing itself in ways beyond human perception. He looked up at the glowing canopy, feeling the soft hum of the alien forest around him. The sounds of the insects, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of the flying creatures, all of it seemed different now. He was no longer just an observer. He was part of something larger, something alive in ways he could barely comprehend. And as he watched the shadows, waiting for Lyra's return, he understood one truth clearly. On this planet, the line between human and alien, observer and participant, thought and reality, was thinner than he had ever imagined. Elias could hardly sleep that night. He lay on the metal cot in his small research cabin, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft hum of the alien forest beyond the reinforced glass. Every sound seemed amplified in his mind, every rustle of leaves or distant call of a creature making him jump. He kept thinking about Lyra, the Lyria who had spoken to him in a way that went beyond words. He wondered how much she had seen of his thoughts, how much she had understood and what it meant for his research. The next morning, he returned to the forest, determined to find her again. He moved carefully, stepping lightly over the glowing moss, scanning the shadows between the trees. He remembered how she had spoken, how she had watched him with such awareness. He had to be cautious, but also brave enough to approach her. As he entered a clearing, he saw her standing there. Lyra's skin shimmered softly in the sunlight, filtering through the thick canopy, changing colors like liquid metal. She regarded him with the same calm intensity as before, her large eyes reflecting curiosity and something deeper he could not name. "You returned," she said simply. There was no judgment in her voice, only observation. "Yes," Elias replied. "I need to understand. I need to learn about you, your people, your ways." Lyra tilted her head slightly, considering him. "You speak too much for one who thinks quietly. Yet you speak well." Elias felt a small smile tug at his lips. "I try to be careful." "You try," she said. "That is human. But we see through effort. We see the intention beneath it. Tell me, why do you wish to learn?" Elias hesitated. How could he explain the complexity of human curiosity, the need to know, the need to connect without sounding foolish? Because knowledge is important, he said finally. We humans try to understand the world around us, to see patterns, to predict outcomes, to learn from what we observe, and you are unlike anything I have ever seen. Lyra's eyes brightened slightly, though the expression was subtle. We are unlike your kind, yet you wish to see. That is admirable. Most humans would not risk understanding. They would disturb control. You observe. Elias nodded. I've learned it is better to watch and listen first, to try to understand before interfering. I do not want to harm your people, Lyra. You do not harm, but you do wonder, she said. And wonder is the first step toward understanding. Come, I will show you. Elias's heart raced. He had expected to watch from afar, to document behavior, to record gestures and sounds. He had not expected an invitation to follow Illyria into their world. He took a cautious step forward, then another, following her deeper into the forest. The trees thickened, their trunks wide and twisted, with branches forming natural arches overhead. Soft lights glowed from the leaves, creating a surreal path that seemed almost alive. Lyra moved with grace, her feet barely touching the ground. Elias followed, careful not to break the delicate balance of the environment. They came to a clearing where several other Lyria were gathered. They were performing what appeared to be a ritual. Hands moved in precise gestures, their eyes meeting in a silent language that Elias could only begin to guess. The forest around them seemed to respond, the glowing moss pulsing gently in rhythm with the Lyria's movements. Elias watched in awe. He had studied human rituals. He had observed animal behavior. He had theorized about intelligence across species, but nothing had prepared him for this. The Lyria were intelligent, yes, but their intelligence was woven into every aspect of their existence, every movement, every interaction with the environment. It was seamless, natural, and breathtaking. Lyra stepped beside him. See how we interact, she said quietly. Not only with each other, but with the world around us. We do not separate ourselves from nature. We are part of it. Our minds, our bodies, our surroundings, they are one. This is why we survive here. This is why we endure. Elias nodded, taking notes, but he also allowed himself to simply observe, to absorb the scene. There was a wisdom in their actions, a harmony that humans often struggle to achieve. The Lyria did not speak, yet they communicated clearly, their gestures and expressions conveying complex ideas and emotions. Can you understand them? Lyra asked, sensing his struggle. I can try, Elias said. I can see patterns, but I cannot fully grasp the meaning. Not yet, Lyra nodded. Understanding takes time. Observation is only the first step. You must feel, not only see. You must listen with more than ears. Think with more than mind. Elias felt a surge of respect for her. Humans often prided themselves on their intelligence, on their ability to think and reason. But here was a being who could see, hear, and feel beyond what humans even considered possible. He realized that to truly understand, he would have to change the way he approached his research, the way he perceived the world around him. The Lyria noticed his hesitation. You hesitate because you fear making a mistake. That is human. But mistakes are part of learning. Do not fear them. Only fear stagnation. Elias took a deep breath. I want to learn. I want to understand your people, your world, your ways. Lyra studied him for a long moment. Then she extended her hand. It was a simple gesture, yet full of meaning. Then walk with me, she said. Learn not as a human who dominates, but as one who listens, one who respects. For the first time, Elias felt that he was not just observing, not just recording data. He was part of something larger. He took her hand carefully, feeling a strange warmth, a connection that went beyond physical touch. Together they moved through the forest, Lyra pointing out plants, insects, and creatures, explaining their roles and significance. Elias listened, absorbing every detail. He noticed how every element of the forest had purpose, how every action of the Lyria was deliberate, how every interaction reflected intelligence and awareness. He realized that this was more than survival. It was a philosophy, a way of life that humans could learn from if they were willing to observe and respect. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky, casting long shadows through the glowing canopy. Elias felt exhausted but exhilarated. He had learned more in a single day with Lyra than he had in weeks of observation from a distance. He began to understand the depth of the Lyria's intelligence, their harmony with their world, and the subtle ways they communicated. As they reached a small stream, Lyra paused. She looked at him with those large, knowing eyes. "You are learning, Elias. But remember, understanding is not possession. Knowledge is not control. Respect the balance. Learn, do not take." Elias nodded solemnly. "I will remember. I want to learn, not to take. I want to understand, not to dominate." Lyra's expression softened. "Then you will go far. Humans have potential, if they can listen, truly listen, and you are capable of more than most. That is why I chose to reveal myself to you." Elias felt a swell of gratitude and awe. Here was a being who could perceive him in ways he could barely comprehend, and yet she had chosen to trust him, to teach him, to guide him. He realized that this trust was not given lightly. It was a gift, and he vowed silently to honor it. As the day came to a close, the forest bathed in the soft glow of the twin suns setting. Lyra led Elias back toward the edge of the clearing. "Tomorrow we continue," she said. "There is much more to see, much more to learn, and you must prepare your mind, not just your eyes." Elias watched her disappear into the shadows once more, feeling a mixture of wonder, anticipation, and responsibility. He knew that this was only the beginning. He had stepped into a world unlike any other, a world of intelligence, harmony, and depth beyond human imagination. And he knew that his journey with the Lyria, with Lyra, would change him forever. He returned to his cabin that night, exhausted, yet exhilarated, his notebook filled with sketches, notes, and observations. But more than that, he carried something else, a sense of connection, a sense of purpose, and the quiet understanding that intelligence was not just measured in thought or invention, but in awareness, empathy, and respect for life around you. And as he drifted into sleep, Elias knew that tomorrow would bring new lessons, new discoveries, and deeper understanding. He had found a teacher in Lyra, and a world full of wonders in the Lyria. His quiet observation had become the first step in a journey that would not only reveal the secrets of Arendor 9, but also teach him what it truly meant to see, to listen, and to understand. The morning sun filtered softly through the tall, twisting trees of Arendor 9, painting the forest floor in patches of gold and green. Elias moved carefully, notebook in hand, following the familiar path Lyra had shown him. He had slept fitfully the night before, his mind still full of the lessons she had shared, her words echoing in his thoughts. Knowledge is not control. Respect the balance. When he reached the clearing, Lyra was waiting. Her posture was relaxed, yet there was a quiet intensity in her gaze. Elias noticed how she always seemed perfectly in tune with her surroundings, as if the forest itself were an extension of her being. "Good morning," Elias said softly. I hope I'm not too early." "You are early," Lyra said, a hint of amusement in her voice. "But that is good. Humans are often late, slow to see what is before them." "You are attentive," Elias smiled. He had grown accustomed to her quiet judgment, finding it challenging yet comforting. Today she seemed ready to take their lessons deeper, beyond observation and simple gestures. "Today," Lyra said, "you will see how we think, not only with mind, but with everything around us. You will learn to feel the connections between all living things here." Elias felt a shiver of anticipation. He had seen their rituals, their subtle communication, but now she spoke of thinking in ways he could barely imagine. "I'm ready," he said, trying to sound confident. Lyra led him through the forest, moving silently over the glowing moss, guiding him to a part of the woods he had not yet explored. The trees here were taller, their trunks wider, their branches intertwining to form natural arches high above. Small streams of clear water cut through the forest, and the air smelled sweet with the scent of alien flowers. "You see this place," Lyra said, gesturing to a cluster of plants with translucent leaves. "Every creature, every plant, every sound, they are all connected. We do not separate ourselves. We do not conquer. We learn, we observe, we interact." Elias crouched to study the plants. He noticed tiny insects moving along the stems, and the leaves seemed to shimmer as if responding to their presence. "It's alive in a way I haven't felt before," he whispered. "Yes," Lyra said. "Alive and aware. Life here communicates in ways your kind calls subtle, but subtle does not mean weak. It means understanding, patience, and balance." As they continued, Elias began to notice small gestures from Lyra, how she tilted her head slightly before stepping forward, how she extended her hand to a plant and it seemed to lean toward her touch, how the insects moved as if guided by her presence. He scribbled notes, but he also allowed himself to simply observe. He realized that no words could capture the depth of what he was seeing. "You watch," Lyra said. "But watching is not enough. You must feel. Listen, not only with ears but with attention. Sense the rhythm of life here. Understand the purpose behind every motion." Elias closed his eyes, inhaling deeply, letting the sounds of the forest wash over him. He felt the subtle vibrations of the moss under his feet, the gentle pulse of water in the streams, the quiet hum of insects and unseen creatures. Slowly, he began to sense patterns, a rhythm that tied the forest together, a harmony that connected all living things. When he opened his eyes, Lyra was smiling faintly. "You begin to see," she said. "Your mind is human, yes, but your heart, you are learning." They reached a wide clearing where several Lyria were gathered. This time they were not performing a ritual. They were engaged in work, gathering food, tending plants, building simple structures, but every action seemed deliberate, meaningful, and in perfect harmony with their environment. Lyra gestured for Elias to observe quietly. "See how we work together," she said. "Every action is coordinated, every thought shared without words. This is how we survive. This is how we thrive." Elias watched in awe. The Lyria communicated through subtle movements, eye contact, and shared understanding. It was a form of teamwork beyond anything he had studied in human societies, or even in the smartest human-designed systems. Each individual contributed to the whole, anticipating needs, correcting mistakes, and supporting one another seamlessly. He realized that their intelligence was not just in their minds, but in their connection to each other and their world. They thought collectively, worked collectively, and lived collectively. Humans, in comparison, seemed isolated, often blind to the web of life around them. Lyra noticed his fascination. "You are learning, Elias, but there is more. Human intelligence is impressive, yes, but often it separates, isolates, and dominates. Ours integrates, harmonizes, and respects." Elias nodded, absorbing her words. He thought about the human tendency to control, to manipulate, to seek power over nature. Here in the forest of Arendor 9, he saw a different path, a path of balance, understanding, and connection. Suddenly, a sharp noise broke the calm, a loud crack of a branch followed by the distant roar of a large creature. The Lyria paused, their eyes alert, bodies tense but controlled. Elias instinctively ducked behind a tree, heart pounding. Lyra stepped forward calmly. "Do not fear," she said. "This is not a threat. This is part of life." From the shadows, a massive creature emerged, a four-legged animal with glistening scales and a long, whip-like tail. It sniffed the air, its eyes moving rapidly, alert and aware. The Lyria did not run or shout. They moved with precision, signaling each other silently, guiding the creature away from their gathering. Elias watched, amazed. He would have panicked, tried to fight, or fled. But the Lyria handled the situation with patience, intelligence, and unity. He realized that their survival depended not on brute force but on awareness, strategy, and coordination. Lyra turned to him. "Do you understand?" She asked. "Yes," he said, "but I can't do that myself." "Not yet. You will," she said. "But first you must learn to trust, to observe, to feel. You must learn that fear is not always a guide. Sometimes it blinds you. Intelligence is knowing when to act, when to wait, and when to understand." Elias nodded, trying to commit her words to memory. He realized that every lesson with Lyra was not just about observing the Lyria, but about understanding himself and his own species. Humans had knowledge, but often lacked patience, respect, and connection. Perhaps that was why Lyra had chosen to teach him, because she saw potential for growth, not only for Elias, but for humanity. The day passed with more lessons. Elias learned how the Lyria cultivated the land without disturbing its natural balance, how they communicated with plants and animals, and how they anticipated challenges in ways humans rarely considered. He began to understand that intelligence was not measured solely by thought or invention, but by perception, harmony, and ethical understanding. As the sun began to set, Lyra led him to a small hill overlooking the forest. The twin suns dipped low, casting the forest in warm golden light, reflecting off the shimmering leaves and glowing moss. Elias felt a sense of peace he had never known, a connection to the world around him that was profound and humbling. "You have learned much today," Lyra said softly, "but understanding is not complete. Observation alone is only the first step. You must integrate what you see, what you feel, and what you learn. Only then can you truly comprehend our ways." Elias looked at her, feeling a mix of admiration, gratitude, and determination. "I will try. I will do my best to understand, to respect, and to learn." Lyra's eyes glimmered faintly. "Good. That is all we ask of those who come to us. Not domination, not possession, not control. Only learning, respect, and connection. You have shown that you can begin this journey. Tomorrow will bring more, and it will challenge you, test your patience, and reveal truths you cannot yet imagine." Elias nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. He had already learned more than he had in weeks of isolated observation, but he knew that the real journey was only beginning. The Lyria's intelligence, their harmony with the world, and their understanding of life itself were lessons humans rarely had the chance to encounter. As he made his way back to the research cabin, his notebook heavy with sketches, observations, and notes, Elias reflected on the day. He realized that his role here was not just to study the Lyria, but to learn from them, to grow alongside them, and to understand what it truly meant to be intelligent in a world that demanded more than knowledge. It demanded wisdom, patience, and respect. And as the night settled over Arendor 9, Elias lay on his cot once again, thinking quietly, but this time with a new understanding. His mind was no longer just observing. It was listening, feeling, and beginning to understand the deeper rhythm of life around him. He had started a journey that would not only reveal the secrets of this alien world, but would also teach him lessons about humanity itself. The forest outside hummed softly, alive with unseen life, and Elias felt a quiet anticipation for the days to come. He knew that tomorrow, and the days after, would test him, challenge him, and push the limits of what he thought he could understand. But he also knew that with Lyra as his guide, he had a chance to witness a form of intelligence and connection that humans had rarely seen, and perhaps to bring back lessons that could change how his own species thought about the world. The morning mist lay heavy over Arendor 9, curling around the trees like silent ghosts. Elias woke earlier than usual, his mind restless with anticipation. Today felt different. The forest seemed to hum with a quiet energy, alive in a way he had never fully noticed before. He had grown used to its rhythms, its subtle signs, but now he sensed a tension under the calm, something waiting to be revealed. He stepped outside his cabin and scanned the forest. Lyra was already there waiting. Her skin shimmered faintly in the soft light, green blending into blue as if the colors of the forest flowed through her. She gestured for him to follow, and Elias hurried to keep up, his notebook forgotten in his pocket. Words could not capture what he might witness today. As they moved through the forest, Lyra explained calmly, "Something approaches, Elias. A storm, unlike any we have seen in years. It will test the balance of this forest and all who live here. You must see how we act, and you must choose how to help." Elias's pulse quickened. Storms were common on Arendor 9, but Lyra's tone carried urgency. He had studied weather patterns, learned survival strategies, but nothing in his training had prepared him for this moment. He followed her deeper into the forest, weaving between glowing ferns and twisting tree roots, feeling the rhythm of life around him. The Lyria were already moving with purpose. They coordinated without words, guiding smaller creatures to safety, reinforcing fragile structures and adjusting to the changing conditions. Elias watched in awe. Their intelligence was not only in observation or strategy, it was in harmony with the environment, in knowing instinctively how to act without disturbing the natural balance. Lyra paused and turned to him. "You will help, Elias, but remember what you have learned. Do not act out of fear. Do not try to dominate. Work with the forest, with us, with the flow of life." Elias nodded, swallowing his fear. He had learned much from Lyra about observation, respect, and patience. Now, he would put it into practice. The wind began to rise, soft at first, then stronger, rustling the glowing moss and shaking the delicate branches above. Clouds gathered quickly, dark and swirling as if drawn by some unseen force. Elias could feel the energy in the air, a vibration that touched his very bones. The storm was coming fast. Lyra led him to a ridge overlooking the research station. From there, Elias could see the human structures, their metallic walls and equipment, vulnerable to the incoming storm. He understood immediately why Lyra had brought him here. The humans would panic, their first instinct to shield themselves, to control the elements. But that approach might worsen the danger. He turned to Lyra. "What can we do?" She extended her hand toward the forest. "Observe, then act. You must integrate with what you have learned. Use your mind, yes, but also your awareness of life. Trust what you feel." Elias took a deep breath, closing his eyes for a moment. He focused on the rhythm of the forest, the pulse of the ground beneath him, the whisper of wind through leaves, the subtle energy of every living thing around him. Slowly, he began to sense solutions. He saw where structures could be reinforced, where energy could be redirected, where humans could move safely without endangering themselves or the forest. Lyra gestured for the Lyria to follow. Elias took his first step toward the station, his movements careful, deliberate, guided not by fear but by understanding. Humans were beginning to notice the approaching storm, some panicking, others scrambling to secure equipment. Elias raised his hand, signaling them to pause, and then gestured them to follow him to safer ground. The Lyria moved beside him, guiding and assisting with calm precision. Their movements were synchronized, fluid, and Elias found himself mirroring them, coordinating without words, relying on observation and intuition. Slowly, the human crew began to see and follow his lead. For the first time, Elias felt a bridge forming between the two species, not through speech, but through understanding and action. The storm hit with full force, gusts of wind tearing across the clearing, rain lashing down in sheets and lightning slicing the sky. Yet within the chaos, Elias felt the calm he had learned from Lyra. The Lyria worked tirelessly, moving animals and humans to safety, stabilizing equipment and redirecting energy flows. Elias followed, using both human knowledge and the lessons he had learned about harmony with nature. He noticed how the Lyria communicated subtly, shifting their bodies, making small gestures, their eyes conveying complex instructions. He tried to mimic them, and slowly humans began to respond, seeing the logic and flow of the actions. Together, humans and Lyria worked in unison, each learning from the other, each complementing the other's strengths. Elias realized then what Lyra had meant. True intelligence was not only in planning or reaction, it was in connection, in working with others, in understanding the environment and acting in concert with it. The Lyria did not dominate the forest. They moved with it, shaping outcomes without disturbing the balance. Humans too could learn this. And in that moment hours passed. The storm raged and subsided, testing the strength, patience, and wisdom of all who faced it. When the skies finally cleared, Elias looked around, breathing heavily, heart pounding with adrenaline and relief. The station was intact, the forest preserved, and the humans had survived not through force, but through understanding and cooperation. Lyra approached him, her skin shifting softly in the post-storm light. "You have learned much today, Elias. You have integrated what you observed, what you felt, and what you understood. That is the essence of intelligence, human and Lyria alike." Elias smiled, exhausted but triumphant. I never imagined it could be like this. Not just surviving, but working together, feeling the world, understanding it. I see now what you meant. Knowledge is not control. Respect is the path. Lyra nodded. Yes. Humans have potential beyond what you know. You think yes. You create yes. But you also must connect, observe, respect, and harmonize. That is why I showed myself to you. You were ready to learn and you acted well. Elias felt a warmth spread through him, a mix of pride and humility. For weeks he had observed silently, afraid of interfering, unsure of himself. Now he understood that observation alone was not enough. True understanding required action, trust, and integration. And in that moment he felt part of something larger than himself, larger than humanity, larger than the station and the forest. The humans around him began to gather, looking at him with newfound respect. They had seen the Lyria's wisdom, their coordination, their harmony with nature. They had also seen Elias stepping beyond fear, connecting with the Lyria and guiding them through the storm. For the first time, humans and Lyria stood not as separate species but as partners sharing understanding and intelligence. Lyra's gaze met his once more. This is only the beginning, Elias. There will be more lessons, more challenges, more discoveries. But today you have learned the greatest. Intelligence is measured not only by thought but by respect, connection, and action. Elias nodded, He looked over the forest, the glowing moss, the twisting trees, the creatures emerging cautiously from hiding, and the humans moving carefully among them. He realized that this planet, its life, and its people had taught him more than any book, lecture, or experiment ever could. He turned to Lyra. "Thank you. For trusting me, for teaching me, for showing me everything." Lyra inclined her head slightly. "Trust is earned, Elias, you have earned it. And one day your people may learn what you have learned. Perhaps then humans and Lyria will share more than this moment. Perhaps you will share understanding, respect, and wisdom across worlds." Elias felt hope rise within him. He knew that humans often struggled with patience and respect, with harmony and balance. But he also knew that he had witnessed a model, a path that could be followed. And he vowed silently that he would carry this lesson with him, teach it when he could, and remember it in every observation, every decision, and every connection he made in the future. The sun set behind the hills, casting long shadows across the forest. Elias stood beside Lyra, feeling the pulse of life around him, the forest, the Lyria, the humans, and felt a deep sense of belonging. He understood, finally, that intelligence was not only in knowing or thinking, but in seeing, feeling, and acting with awareness. As night fell, the forest glowed softly under the twin moons, and Elias realized that he was no longer simply an observer. He was part of the world he had come to study, a participant in its harmony, a bridge between humans and Lyria, and for the first time, he felt the weight of possibility, the potential for understanding, respect and connection across species, worlds, and minds. He glanced at Lyra one last time before turning back toward the research station. She nodded silently, her eyes reflecting pride, trust, and hope. Elias smiled to himself, knowing that the lessons of Arendor 9 would stay with him forever. And in that quiet, glowing forest where humans and Lyria had stood together through storm and challenge, Elias finally understood the meaning of connection, the essence of intelligence, and the promise of what could be achieved when fear was set aside and curiosity guided the mind and heart.